One of Marie Antoinette's surprises when she arrived in Versailles was that there was not one single time in her life where she could be alone. And it started from the first moment when she opened her eyes in the morning. It was like an open stage. And I think that that constant pressure was very difficult to live with.
They call on me in my chamber. Anyone can come, as long as they belong to the court. I put on my rouge and wash my hands in front of everyone.
La tradition en France veut que la reine ait une vie totalement publique. Marie Antoinette a l'habitude de faire un petit peu ce qu'elle veut, puis il faut le dire, elle a envie de jouer. C'est une jeune princesse d'une quinzaine d'années, elle veut jouer, et l'étiquette de cour est extrêmement rigide.
She doesn't want to listen to les tantes, her aunts, who define royal ceremony at Versailles. She collects a group of, chuckly sort of high school valley girl friends around her, really, who say, yes, don't listen to the, boring old crones.
The teenager refused to take the tedious court rituals seriously, mocked those who did, and provoked her mother to dispatch one admonishing letter after another by courier from Vienna.
Do not let yourself go to making fun of others. At your age, the world forgives many frivolities and childish acts. But as time passes, you yourself will suffer from them.
You must trust me very little to believe that I am so unreasonable as to amuse myself and neglect those I must honor.
Do try to get your head stocked with good reading. You need it more than almost anyone.
My greatest happiness consists in pleasing you. I'm so desperately sorry that you believe what people tell you.
Making people like us is a talent which you have mastered so perfectly. Do not lose it by neglecting your kind heart, your frankness, your amiability. You owe it neither to your beauty, which in fact is not so great, nor to your talents or culture. You know very well you have neither.
Maria Theresa knew every detail of her daughter's behavior, from reports from Marie Antoinette's confidential advisor, the Austrian diplomat Count Mercy. Marie Antoinette never imagined that her trusted counselor was also her mother's spy. Mercy's network of informants even included the princess's own servants, who brought him news of everything. News from the royal bedroom was not good. Months after their wedding night, the young couple still had not consummated their marriage. "I find my wife charming," Louis told the king. "I love her, but I still need a little time to overcome my timidity." A year later, nothing had happened. 2 years went by. 3, 4, still nothing.
Incredible to think about it. He had some extraordinary sexual problem. And I think in the end it was psychological, but many people have thought there was a physical problem. And he absolutely declined to consummate the marriage.
Tongues at court were wagging. If Louis couldn't fulfill his duties in bed, the gossips wondered, could he fulfill his duties when he became king? On May 10, 1774, all eyes at the palace were focused on a single candle burning in a courtyard window. Louis XV lay dying from smallpox. On the king's death, the candle would be extinguished. Forbidden to visit the sick man for fear of infection, the young heirs to the throne waited as the candle flickered in the night air and was snuffed out. Marie Antoinette and her husband threw themselves on their knees and prayed. "O God, guide us, protect us," they cried. "We are too young to reign." In the great cathedral at Reims on June 11, 1775, while 19-year-old Marie Antoinette looked on, her 20-year-old husband was crowned King Louis XVI. The bells rang out the news. The people rejoiced. Sunshine set the stained glass windows aglow.
Ces jeunes gens incarnent un avenir qui est radieux. Ils jouissent d'une popularité extraordinaire. Ce sont des flots d'amour qui montent vers ce jeune couple.
The French people seemed to adore their new queen. Only the queen's mother was filled with foreboding.
I am greatly distressed. My daughter's fate will either be wholly splendid or extremely unfortunate. There is nothing to calm my apprehensions. She is so young, has never had any power of application, nor ever will have.
As Louis became king, rioters were taking to the streets of Paris, demanding cheap bread. Times were hard. A disastrous harvest had brought soaring prices for grain. The country was in debt. The people hoped their new king would make things better.
It's a very bad time at that particular moment. But the real problem for France is actually, it's saddled with an incredibly antiquated set of governing institutions. And to actually make them work, you need a genius king. Louis XVI seems to be a nice, decent, quite bright, very conscientious person who never really wanted to be king.
The king mainly wanted to be alone, and for him, the court and the life of the court was painful, was always an effort. Being a king wasn't pleasurable for him.
Louis XVI was his wife's polar opposite. He was ponderous, awkward, irresolute. She was emotional, graceful, quick to make up her mind. He loved to read. She rarely opened a book. He had a royal passion for hunting, but he lacked majesty and authority. There is nothing haughty or regal in his bearing, a courtier observed. He gives the appearance of a peasant waddling along behind his plow. All eyes turn toward the queen. She is grace itself when she moves, wrote one observer. They say she does not dance in time, but if so, it is certainly the time which is at fault.
Marie Antoinette and her husband lived two different lives. He was mainly a man of the day, and he would go to bed early and get up early. And Marie Antoinette loved the night.
The king was devoted to his wife and let her have her own way. Now that she was queen, she threw herself into a hectic round of pleasure.
My tastes do not accord with the king's. He is only interested in hunting and in metalworking. I should not look particularly well standing beside a forge.
While her husband was sleeping, she was relishing the pleasures of Paris. The opera, the theater, the masked balls. She gambled recklessly, piling up debts that her husband quietly paid. She spent freely on luxurious dresses and wore her hair piled 3 feet high, adorning it with feathers and ribbons in the outlandish fashion of the day.
It is really like someone who's come from a sort of Austrian backwater and has suddenly, sort of walked onto Madison Avenue, you know, really. There is no place where the dresses are more gorgeous. She's a kid, you know, she's got a credit card with no limit, really.
Maria Theresa was made aware of everything and dispatched from Vienna a barrage of stinging criticism.
I have news that you have been buying bracelets and that you have thrown your finances into disorder and have heaped up a burden of debt. It is well to be in the fashion, but a good-looking queen endowed with charm, simplicity of attire, is more suitable to exalted rank. A queen only degrades herself. Do not forfeit the good name you acquired to begin with. I, who love my little queen and watch her every footstep, cannot hesitate to warn her of her frivolousness.
Her mother is constantly saying, you know, my airhead daughter, the shopaholic, you know, stop it. You know, there are riots going on. You can't sort of, you know, really diamondomania must stop now.
What does my mother want? I'm terrified of being bored. I must have some distraction, and I can find it only in increased amusements.
Once, with a sad and thoughtful look, the Queen confided to Count Mercy that her situation as a married woman was distressing.
I think she felt desperate. She wasn't having any kind of physical fulfillment at all. She could go dancing, she loved gambling, and it was easy to turn to inanimate objects, to have jewels and beautiful dresses. I think she compensated.
By now, tongues were wagging not only at Versailles, but all over France. Everyone asks himself beneath his breath, one bit of doggerel proclaimed, can the king do it, or can't he? The wretched queen despairs of it. Some say he cannot get it up. Others that he cannot get it in.
There were insinuations that she could not have children with her husband because she would not sleep with him. She would sleep with other men. It's not true, but Marie Antoinette did not care. And she just found it was not very funny. She had no sense at all of how serious it was.
Elle a voulu faire de sa sexualité une chose privée. Et ça, c'est quelque chose que les courtisans n'ont pas du tout voulu entendre, n'ont pas voulu comprendre. Et je pense qu'une bonne partie des attaques vient de cela. Forcément, si la reine veut garder sa sexualité dans un domaine privé, c'est qu'elle a quelque chose à cacher. C'est qu'il y a un secret. C'est qu'elle a des amants. C'est qu'elle ne contente pas le roi. C'est que les enfants qui vont naître ne sont pas ceux du roi.
In 1777, Versailles welcomed a royal guest, the Queen's older brother, Joseph II of Austria. With the fate of France and the alliance with Austria entwined with two young people and their problems in the bedroom, Maria Theresa sent her son to help them. Joseph thought his sister was a pretty featherhead, and as they walked through the splendid gardens, he urged her to mend her ways. He criticized her towering hairdos and heedless pursuit of pleasure, but he was also captivated by her sincerity and charm. "She is an amiable and refined woman," he wrote his brother, "not quite grown up yet, little inclined to take careful thought, but with insight which has often surprised me. She has, however, a strong leaning towards pleasure." Joseph and Louis got on well, so well that the king confided the humiliating details of his conjugal failure. Louis admitted that he embraced the queen in the name of duty only. "Imagine," Joseph wrote his brother, "in his marriage bed, this is the secret. He has strong, perfectly satisfactory erections. He introduces the member, stays there without moving for about 2 minutes, withdraws without ejaculating but still erect, and begs good night. It's incredible because he sometimes has nighttime emissions. It is only when he is actually inside and going at it that it never happens. Oh, if only I could have been there. I could have seen to it. The King of France would have been whipped, so that he would have ejaculated out of sheer rage, like a donkey." Joseph's visit lasted 2 months. As he said goodbye, he handed his sister a document that ran 30 pages, filled with advice and warnings. "You are getting older," he wrote, "and you no longer have the excuse of youth. What will become of you? An unhappy woman, and still more unhappy princess." Marie Antoinette was 21 years old. Two months later, whatever Joseph's advice to the King of France had been, it seems to have worked like a kind of miracle tonic.
August 30th, 1777. My dear mother, I am in the most essential happiness of my entire life. It has already been more than 8 days since my marriage has been perfectly consummated. The proof has been repeated yesterday even more completely than the first time. I do not think that I am pregnant yet, but at least have the hope of being so from one moment to the next.
It had taken more than 7 years, but the great work, as Joseph called it, had been accomplished.